Ching Shih, a pirate who terrorized the Chinese Sea in the early 19th century, is remembered as perhaps one of the most devastating pirates who ever existed. Not only did she defeat the British, the Portuguese and the Spanish, but just about anyone else who was stupid enough to cross her path. Perhaps that's what makes Ching Shih's story so compelling, that she was in fact a woman who commanded 40,000 pirates in a time where women were not necessarily considered as equals. What's even more compelling about Ching Shih's story is that she was born into very meagre means. Little is known about her early life, but we do know that Ching was a prostitute working in a brothel in Guangzhou. In 1801, she would meet Cheng I, who was a notorious pirate and a repeat customer for her. It's said that Cheng I grew infatuated with her, so much so that he would ask her to marry him, which she would accept. Others have speculated that this was more of a business move on behalf of Cheng, who was already a part of a successful pirate family. However, it's difficult to fathom how marrying Ching Shih, a poor courtesan, would benefit him financially. Upon marrying Cheng, Ching would officially adopt his son and his second-in-command, Sheng Pao. With Ching by his side, Sheng I would go on to create a union between the most powerful fleets of the Chinese Sea. From 1804 onwards, they would be known as the Red Flag Fleet. Cheng I passed away at the young age of 39, however, in 1807, but Ching Shih wasted no time mourning her husband and was already scheming her way to maintain control over the fleet. She would begin to form relationships with the most powerful members of the crew and would make herself imperative to the captains in the fleet. How this was done was unknown, though it's not unheard of that Ching would sell her body in order to obtain some of the alliances. She even began an intimate relationship with her stepson, Sheng Pao, in order to consolidate power. Ching recognized that a lawless fleet would soon degenerate and could go against her at any given notice. She therefore instated a code that her entire fleet would follow. Firstly, any pirate who disobeyed orders from their superior was beheaded on the spot, no questions asked. Secondly, no pirate was allowed to steal from the public fund, nor were they allowed to steal or harm any villages or their citizens who provided the fleet with resources. Thirdly, all the goods that were seized were put up for inspection and subsequently distributed by the fleet leader. The original plunderer of the goods would receive only 20% of that which he presented. Finally, any money that was stolen would be required to be handed over to the fleet leader, who would usually only give a small fraction in return. The fleet leader would usually use this money for repairs and maintenance. It's been noted that the penalty for a first offence for not surrendering goods to superiors was a severe whipping. A second offence usually led to death. There were also special rules for female captives, which were quite harsh. The women who were deemed ugly were simply released. The more beautiful women, however, would be made into wives by the pirates, but only on the condition that the women were treated with respect and that the pirate marrying them would stay faithful. The penalty for breaking these rules? Yep, you guessed it, death. Ching had strict rules about the protection of female prisoners. If a woman was raped or otherwise harmed by a pirate, he was beheaded. If a pirate looked at a woman the wrong way, he was beheaded. However, if a pirate had consensual sex with a female prisoner, he was still beheaded. The woman who agreed to have sex with him in the first place would have her ankles tied with cannonballs and she would be thrown overboard. Pirates who deserted or who tried to escape Ching's harsh regime would have their ears cut off and they would be paraded about the ship as a coward. It's been noted that these sorts of rules cultivated a crew who were hungry for attack, united in defense, and unwilling to compromise even when outnumbered by the enemy. Ching sailed up and down the China Sea, plundering towns, markets and villages, and even going on to impose taxes on the settlements. In one settlement known as the Sanshan village, Ching and her crew beheaded 80 men and sold their women and children into slavery. In 1808, the Chinese government had decided that Ching had had enough fun. An Imperial Fleet was commissioned, and they sailed out to put an end to her reign across the seas. However, Ching was unfazed by the news of this, and chose to rather audaciously set sail to meet the Imperial Fleet. A fierce battle went ahead, but the Chinese Imperial Fleet was embarrassingly overwhelmed. Ching even went as far as to capture a bunch of their ships. Seeing the danger of Ching in the flesh, Kuo Lang, who was the admiral of the Chinese Navy, became so scared at the thought of being captured that he killed himself before Ching could get her hands on him. The Chinese government grew desperate to be rid of the red flag fleet. Ching was making them look like fools on the sea, and with every victory, her crew grew stronger. China sought help from the Dutch, British and Portuguese fleets, but even they had trouble bringing Ching down. In 1809, however, Ching's luck would finally begin to waver. She would suffer defeats from the Portuguese navy, and would sustain their greatest wound at the Battle of Tiger Mouth, a series of battles that would take place over the year. After this encounter, Ching would accept amnesty from the Chinese government and give up her life of piracy. Interestingly enough, most of her crew were allowed to live, on the condition that they surrendered their weapons. They were also allowed to keep all of the loot. In her later life, Ching would open a gambling house in her old hometown. She would die in 1844 at the age of 69, surrounded by her family. Ching Shih is perhaps the most deadliest pirate I've covered so far, unless you guys can think of any more fierce and bloodthirsty pirates, though it's hard to top someone who was so fond of beheading people. But let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Our next pirate was the original pirate to fly the flag of a skull and 2 crossed swords. Until the next time, guys.